Imagine a world where society has built invisible walls between people, walls that decide who you can talk to, where you can walk, and even if your shadow is considered pure. Today, we're diving into the story of how a simple, everyday act, just sharing a meal, became a quiet but powerful act of revolution.
Now you might be thinking, a revolution? Over dinner? It sounds a little far-fetched, right? But for the people in the story we're about to explore, the answer was a definite, resounding yes. This one act, this single meal, had the power to shake the very foundations of their world.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the invisible wall, to really get a feel for the social structure back then. Then, we'll see what happened when some people started crossing the threshold. After that, we'll get to the heart of it all, the revolutionary meal. And finally, we'll see how it all led to a new dignity.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're in the Rayalaseema region of South India, back in the 19th century. Society here was strictly organized by a caste system, and for the Dalit community, life was completely defined by something called untouchability.
And I mean, just look at how systematic this was. These weren't suggestions, they were brutally enforced rules. You couldn't even get close to people from other castes. Your shadow, think about that for a second. Your very shadow was seen as impure. You were banned from public wells, kept out of common spaces. And the food you made, no matter how good it was considered defiling just because you touched it.
So let's be really clear here. This was way more than just social rules. The entire system was basically engineered to deny people their basic humanity. It was a constant psychological attack designed from the ground up to make an entire community feel like they were less than human.
But into this incredibly rigid world, a new group of people arrived, and they started doing things that were just completely unthinkable at the time.
So you have these missionaries showing up from places like the London Missionary Society. And when they got to the Rayalaseema region, they didn't do what everyone else did. They didn't just interact with the upper castes. No, they took a totally different approach. And this breaks down just how radical their method was. First, they just walked through the Dalit hamlets. These were areas that other people would go out of their way to avoid. That alone was a shock. But then they took it a step further. They actually entered the hamlets. And then came the final step, the one that broke all the rules. They stepped inside their homes. That single act, just crossing that threshold, was like taking a hammer to those invisible walls.
And all of this was building up to the main event, the most profound act of defiance imaginable in that context, the revolutionary meal.
There's a term for this. It's called interdining, and really it just means eating together. But back then, in that place, it was anything but simple. Because the rules of purity were so deeply connected to food. Sharing a meal with someone considered untouchable was a direct challenge to the very logic of the whole system.
Okay, let's zoom in on a specific story. We've got records of a missionary named Todman. He was near a village called Kadapa, and he went right into a Dalit family's home to eat with them. And get this, check out the details. He didn't ask for a special chair or anything. He sat right down on the floor with them. He ate with his hands, just like they did. He was sending a message, loud and clear. I'm not better than you. We're equals. The records say the other villagers were just completely stunned.
And this wasn't a one-time thing. Over in Anantapur, a female missionary, a woman named Dorothea Smith, did the very same thing. She joined a Dalit family for a meal. So right there, she was breaking down barriers of both caste and gender.
And the description of this moment is just so incredibly powerful. They were all sitting on a single mat, sharing the same food. And afterwards, they just talked. It was described as a moment that felt like family, a feeling that society had denied them for their entire lives.
So what was the real impact of all this? This wasn't just about a nice gesture or a free meal. It was about planting a seed of something that had been taken from them, a new sense of dignity.
Think about it like this. You have two completely opposite messages. The caste system was screaming one thing, day in and day out. You are impure. You are less than. But this shared meal? It quietly but firmly said something totally different. You are our equal. Your food is welcome. You are family. It was a human act pushing back against an inhuman system.
For people who had been told their whole lives that they were untouchable, to have someone sit with them, to eat the food they prepared, well, this was something they would never, ever forget. It was like a little crack of light in a wall of constant humiliation.
And this right here, this quote gets to the very heart of it. That simple act of solidarity sparks something new inside them. Courage. It gave them this feeling, maybe for the first time, that we too are worthy of respect. That's an internal revolution right there.
You know, it's easy to look at this story and think it's just about charity, or about religion or conversion. But it's so much bigger than that. At its core, this is a story about dignity. It's about how a simple, radical act of empathy can start to restore what a cruel system tries to steal.
And that kind of leaves us with a big question for today, doesn't it? Back then, sharing a meal was a huge symbol. So what are the simple acts of shared humanity that can challenge the injustices we see in our own world? What does it look like to share a meal today? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.